Welcome to the ancient world, Gobekli Tepe and the dawn of civilization. This is the story of the almost incredible research into prehistoric human life and the world's earliest known substantial stone constructions, erected some 10,500 years BC near the village of Gobekli in the Mesopotamian region of Turkey, discovered and excavated by German archaeologist and Neolithic expert Professor Claude Schmidt. Our knowledge of the ancient world is increasing at a tremendous rate, with the development of new scientific equipment, from the converting of wartime mine detectors into treasure-seeking devices to geomagnetic underground searching, and with the laboratory C14 radiocarbon accurately dating artifacts up to 50,000 years ago, whilst DNA now traces human and animal origins. We are all the time learning more about our ever earlier ancestors. I have long had an interest in ancient history, which probably started in the late 1940s, whilst I was undergoing Royal Artillery training at Redhill camp in Wiltshire, and finding the then unfenced Stonehenge within walking distance. I even lay on the sacrificial stone at the summer solstice, sadly with no apparent result. There followed years of relevant reading and visiting with our daughters many ancient sites and museums in Britain and Western Europe. Later, we made many long-term European and Turkish tours in our motor caravan, whilst membership of history groups in Reigate U3A revived my pleasure in research. So the announcement of the Gobekli Tepe excavations attracted my immediate and continuing interest. Gobekli Tepe is one of the most important archaeological excavations of the last 50 years, revealing monumental stone architecture, possibly of a shrine or temple, which has radically changed the historical concept of the social, cultural, and religious activities of the pre-pottery Neolithic age, adding to the knowledge of our early social history gained from the 17,000 BC cave art at Lascaux in France. Carbon dating of the Gobekli buildings as 10,500 BC increases the knowledge of human social activity to an almost unbelievable 12,000 years ago. Putting this into context, the Gobekli structure was erected some 7,000 years earlier than that found by British Arthur Evans at Knossos, Britain's Circle of Stones at Stonehenge, 3100 BC, German Heinrich Schliemann's excavations at Mycenae, 3000 BC, or the Egyptian pyramids, which have also been dated to about 3000 BC. In Turkish Eastern Anatolia, fed by the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the fertile plains of Mesopotamia have long been regarded as where Western farming began, and there are many indications of Homo sapiens' Neolithic occupation. This period came towards the end of the Pleistocene Ice Age, when only chiseled flint arrowheads and simple tools were known, but the people then were as intelligent and resourceful as we are today. And although they had not yet discovered pottery or the wheel, they made skillful use of their available implements, as you will see. In 1995, 50-year-old Dr. Klaus Schmidt joined the German-Turkish team led by German Professor Hauptmann in Western Anatolia, carrying out emergency excavations in the area that was to be submerged under the new Ataturk Dam. At Novelle Kore, a small Neolithic site dated about 10,000 BC, they found considerable evidence of pre-pottery Neolithic occupation, together with a number of mysterious, previously unknown monolithic T-shaped pillars. When, a year later, work at Neolithic had to cease, a great deal of exploration was carried out over a wide area further east, particularly at a mountain ridge near the small village of Gobekli, a little north of the large city of Sanliurfa, ancient Edessa, and close to the birthplace of biblical prophet Abraham. Here, in 1963, an American archaeologist, Peter Benedict, had found beneath an Islamic cemetery large deposits of arrowheads and flints, together with huge limestone slabs, thought by him to be gravestones. He had postulated that Byzantine and Islamic cemeteries had been built over Neolithic remains and reported this to the Turkish Archaeological Authority, but they showed little interest. But when Dr. Schmidt visited Gobekli, he decided that the slabs were the tops of Neolithic pillars similar to, but much older than those at Neolithic. He climbed a convenient fig mulberry tree and saw to his considerable interest that there were some 20 tells in the immediate vicinity. Tell is the archaeological name for an artificial mound formed from the accumulated debris of people who had lived on the same site for hundreds or thousands of years and have of great potential value for excavation. In Turkish, the tells are named tepes, potbelly hills, hence the suffix Gobekli Tepe. Geomagnetic surveys revealed evidence that under these tells more than 250 stone pillars within a series of circular stone structures averaging 98 foot in diameter, and it was decided to excavate 5 of them, initially under the supervision of Professor Hauptmann, and when he retired in 2003 by Dr. Schmidt. They soon made increasingly extraordinary finds. The wooden case shown is for temporary protection. In each tell was revealed 2 massive limestone pillars, each some 20 foot tall, which had been meticulously mortised into stone bases, highly polished with terrazzo, burnt lime, whilst each pillar had a wider carved area across its top. All were richly carved, demonstrating the artist's skill with primitive tools of chiseling the pillars smooth whilst leaving the carved animals and symbols in relief. All the pillars faced southeast and were surrounded by smaller stone pillars to define the inner circles, and all contained within rough stone outer walls, most of these with carved benches. Some of the central pillars appear to be stylized representations of masculine humans, with the top of the T-stone representing the face, and richly carved with hands, arms, wide belt, and a loincloth. Contemporary finds in the excavation, such as Urfa Man, the earliest yet discovered carving in limestone of a life-sized human male, and the female figure engraved on one circle floor, show that they were quite competent at carving human beings. So why did they use this abstract form on the pillars? Just one of the many mysteries to be considered. Other pillars bore carvings of animals and birds, but there were no depictions of organized violence, such as hunting raids or of wounded animals, nor of the game such as the deer on which society depended for food, as is seen in the Neolithic cave paintings. Instead, they portrayed formidable creatures such as lions, bulls, boars, foxes, snakes, spiders, and vultures. The 3 smaller pillars shown here have on the left birds with a scorpion, on the right birds with a wild boar, whilst the center one features a net ending with snake heads and carved above a ram. Individually carved animals were also found, including a wild boar. Other pillars were decorated with enigmatic pictograms, which again are similar to those known in the French Neolithic caves, and like pictures in medieval churches, possibly conveyed a message to pre-literate viewers. Some smaller pillars were also carved, one with a row of flightless birds, similar to the now long extinct dodo. In the second tell excavated, a stone bowl had been carved into the floor, along with a number of large freestanding stone bowls, each of about 40-litre capacity, possibly to hold an early form of beer or for some other ritual purpose. Also, of considerable, mysterious, and contentious importance is that two outer circles each contained a small upright stone pillar with a whole board, which a university computer recreation of the universe 12,000 years ago indicates that a viewer standing between the two facing pillars would have focused through the aperture the very bright star Deben in the constellation of Cygnus. This possibly suggests that Neolithic people of that early time regarded the universe to be of great spiritual importance. Many theories have been advanced, but we'll probably never really know which, if any, is correct. A significant find within the info remains have been hundreds of broken skulls, of which just 3 have deep, straight-line grooves carved by a flint tool, which must have been made shortly after the person died, whilst the bone was relatively elastic, as shown in this present-day recreation. They are unique in archaeological history. One skull had a hole drilled into its crown, which suggests that it may have been hung up for some ritual purpose. Also found was an intentionally decapitated human statue, a figure bearing a human head as a gift, and a pillar depicting a bird-like headless individual. Excavations indicate that each circle was actively used for some 200 years, then was deliberately covered and replaced by a new structure. This practice continued until about 8000 BC, when the last one was covered, buried, under some 500 cubic meters of soil. There is no evidence as to why the use of the circles ended, nor of any changed or ongoing activity, but it has preserved the structures for posterity. And there is no indication in the vicinity of any domestic dwellings for the builders, although of course they may have erected the hunter-gatherers' customary tents, leaving no trace. However, in the backfill of the buried circles was found large quantities of butchered animal bones, 60% of them from gazelles, suggesting regular, large-scale feasting. As yet, there's no evidence of a cemetery or of mass burials. Klaus Schmidt competently led the ever-expanding excavations, generously financed by both Turkish and German government archaeological research departments. He was married to Turkish archaeologist Sigrim Korsa, and they purchased a house at the nearby town of Sanliurfa, which became the project's base. Sadly, in 2014, aged 61, Dr. Schmidt died of a heart attack while swimming in the Baltic, just a year before the new Sanliurfa Museum opened, displaying many of his discovered artifacts. Exploration continues with a Turkish-German team, now led by Turkish director Celal Uludağ, which has so far uncovered a water cistern, a curved stone wall of unknown purpose, as well as a further 200 pillars. When an archaeological excavation project is opened, 3 questions always arise. When, how, and why. When? The age of the Gobekli Tepe complex has been scientifically dated as about 10,500 years BC, although recent geophysical investigation suggests that an even earlier structure could be beneath the oldest circle excavated. How? This is more difficult to identify. It was generally believed that Neolithic humans were hunter-gatherers in small tribes seasonally following their sources of food, with no permanent base. But the construction of Gobekli Tepe, and of course the settlement at Nevala Kore, implies organization of a degree not hitherto associated with that period. Firstly, how did they design and build such sophisticated structures? There must have been centuries of development preceding them, probably of wood as at Stonehenge. It's estimated that up to 500 men were needed to quarry and then carry the 20-30-ton pillars from the local quarries, indicating that the whole construction required a large, long-term source of labor, organized by leaders with a clear idea of the intended result. Erected without the carrying aid of domesticated animals, and some 7,000 years before the Great Pyramids were built in Egypt, also indicates that Neolithic workers knew how to use poles, boards, and pulleys, etc., for the handling of huge stones. A modern pillar re-erection at Gobekli uses a procedure similar to that visualized for Stonehenge, together with a possible alternative method. The extensive carvings also indicate they had developed considerable cultural and artistic abilities, and that there was food beyond subsistence level, allowing labor and the time for such work. Why? This is the tantalizing crux of the whole subject. At Gobekli, as seen, huge stone constructions were created, and with regular variation maintained and used for almost 2,000 years, until apparently covered and abandoned about 8,000 BC. But, as with our own Stonehenge, it is not known why it was built or how it was used. As Peter Benedict had earlier reported, a much later Byzantine and then an Islamic cemetery had existed there, which suggests that the site may have had an earlier cult, social, or ritual significance, but again, we cannot be certain. At that so distant time ago, the only possible evidence of earlier societies and their behavior is drawn from archaeological findings, with no as yet known written documentation until the Sumerian tablets some 4,000 years later, and all theories, no matter how learned, are conjectural. Dr. Schmidt was convinced that Gobekli Tepe, visualized by him as originally built, was never a settlement, but was a sanctuary or center for large social groups gathering over centuries to perform rituals involving the use of human skulls, which he speculated indicated a cult of dead ancestors. He suggested that the T-shaped pillars carved with human forms represented these ancestors, as he knew from wide archaeological evidence that a belief in gods with carved or painted representation didn't arrive in Mesopotamia for another 4,000 years, where they were associated with extensive temples and palaces. In recent years, some 12 tells with T-shaped columns, but within smaller circles, have been identified over southeastern Anatolia, such as Catahoulak, close to Gobekli Tepe, supporting Klaus Schmidt's learned and experienced suggestions. This is one of the latest photographs of the 5 circles, remembering that, when built, only one would have been exposed at a time. What the beliefs or social needs that created and then abandoned these substantial structures towards the end of the Neolithic age may never be known. What is now known is that some 20,000 years ago, towards the end of the Neolithic age, and known to archaeologists as the Eemian interstadial, the Earth tilted slightly nearer to the Sun, warming the planet and so ending the Second Ice Age. As the climate slowly warmed, the subsequent thaw caused tremendous widespread flooding. The story of Noah's Ark, but I won't deviate into that. Vegetation increased and spread noticeably near to Gobekli, where the discovery and cultivation of einkorn, very similar to today's wheat but with fewer seeds, provided a major local food source, whilst the vegetation brought game animals further south, allowing more local hunting, possibly explaining the many gazelle bones found in the toes. And this, together with the domestication of animals, probably began the conversion of hunter-gatherers into settled village communities, creating the dawn of civilization some thousands of years earlier than previously thought. Whilst of tremendous scientific importance, overshadowed by the continuing wars and international political and social upheaval, and lacking the visual appeal such as that of Tutankhamun or the terracotta warriors, public awareness of Gobekli Tepe has been limited, but the question why continues. The indications are that Gobekli Tepe is an important keystone, breaking down the assumptions of hundreds of years of knowledge to tell the story of the dawn of civilization. But was it a sacred place, a temple, a ritual area, or none of these? Only many more years of research may possibly tell. Other than detailed coverage in an English translation of the Turkish magazine Actual Archaeology, the only authoritative work on Gobekli has been published in German and Turkish, but books and papers have also been written in English, containing a wide range of theories for the purposes of the complex. The holes indicating possible stargazing are referred to above, and the Edinburgh University has also suggested that the symbolic pillar carvings record a still not reliably identified comet impact of about 13,000 years ago, causing the above-mentioned factual ice age. Other authors, as they have similarly done for many other ancient buildings and landscape carvings all over the world, claim that aliens from outer space directed the building, which, without any confirmable evidence, unfairly patronizes the abilities of our early human builders. One of the few books in English is by Andrew Collins, a TV program writer who made his amateur archaeological reputation by jointly discovering a huge cave beneath the Egyptian Giza Plateau, and who later has played a major role in arranging the display of Gobekli artifacts in Silufa Museum. His book, like his many other books about ancient sites, while containing knowledgeable descriptions and photographs of Gobekli, also claims that aliens from space were responsible for its creation, and even extends to a possible location of the Garden of Eden. A BBC 4 documentary in 2017 about Gobekli, which some of you may have watched, was obviously based on Collins' book, and for popular appeal concentrated on possible aliens and the location of the Garden of Eden. In recent years, to attract more tourists with foreign currency to the excavation, the Turkish government's Archaeological Authority, with financial support from Germany, has developed the surrounding area with screening over the uncovered main circle and built pathways, tourist shelters and car parks. In 2018, UNESCO conferred upon Gobekli Tepe the honor and protection of World Heritage status. The Sanliurfa Museum is regarded by prehistory specialists as one of the most important archaeological museums in the world, attracting more and more general visitors. While Sanliurfa has extended its airport and many new hotels have been built, including a Holiday Inn, the archaeological exploration will continue for many years. Explorative trenches been dug and continuous geomagnetic and radiocarbon searching, with every artifact recorded and DNA examined, all constantly increasing our knowledge of this unique example of our world. I would dearly have wanted to visit Gobekli. Sadly, before the excavations were publicly announced, we had visited Tarsus, scene of the meeting of Antony and Cleopatra, described by Shakespeare, and the birthplace of New Testament Paul, and it was only 3 hours' drive from Sanliurfa. Later, the Home Office recommended not to travel to that zone of Turkey, which would have meant going without insurance cover, and when finally allowed, advancing age dictated against it, so I've had to be content with published research. The Gobekli Tepe discoveries have created worldwide scientific interest, which has certainly fascinated me and hopefully has interested and entertained you. If you've visited Turkey, you'll probably know that guli guli means goodbye. So I will end without attempting to pronounce goodbye and good luck.